I'm Chris from Nerd Alert News, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. The opinions expressed are those of the individual host. Check out all the other great podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
You are listening to the Starling Tribune, a podcast dedicated to the Arrow TV show.
This guy gets more airtime than the Kardashians, right?
This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, situations, and stories are the properties of Time Warner. I am the Oracle, and this is your Tribune.
Welcome to our special edition, second special edition, season 4, spring hiatus edition of the Starling Tribune. I am Stargate Pioneer. My friends, call me SP. Please call me SP. And your reporters for this special edition of the Starling Tribune are Neil.
4 bolts, 4 bodies, works for me.
And myself, and I am just not a comic book fan, but I am a Felicity fan. Yay! This week, since there are no episodes of Arrow due to the spring hiatus on the CW, yay, spring break, we're going to be looking at the Arrow Season 2.5 graphic novel, which is going to answer a lot of questions about what happened between Season 2 and 3. They don't refer to any of this, so it's definitely canon, and you got to go seek it out in order to know what happens. And it is what we're going to talk about today. So this podcast is recorded on Thursday, March 10th, 2016. Live on the Pleb streaming service. We are just a couple of guys tonight who normally discuss the TV show Arrow, and just a reminder that I am no comic expert. I'm really a science fiction guy, but I'm catching up to the comic lore thanks to reading the comics and to great folks like Neil.
I read way too many comics. My name is Neil, and I read comics.
Yeah, right.
There's a 7-step program for that, I think.
It's CA, Comics Anonymous. Is that what the CA in like Amazon CA stands for?
Oh, it's probably, yeah. It has nothing to do with Canada. It's just, Comics Anonymous.
Right.
Yep. No, that works, actually. I'm good with that.
Good. Just a little reminder that during this podcast, we'll be talking about news articles and announcements that have dropped in the past week, and they probably will impact future episodes. So please consider yourself warned for those spoilers. If you avoid the internet for some reason, and I don't know why you'd be listening to this if you avoid the internet, but if you do avoid complete the internet and don't want any news of what's going on with Arrow, then at the news standpoint, you probably want to step out. But we don't actually, it's not like Reality Steve, like with The Bachelor. So like, who's going to win and who doesn't win. No, we're not really doing it because we still don't know who's in the grave. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, so consider yourself warned, and all of our past shows that have been released can be found at GonnaGeek.com. So Neil.
Yeah, so tonight, as SP said, we have no new episode of Arrow. We're still on hiatus. So instead, we took a look at Arrow Season 2.5, the originally released digital comic book series put out by writer and showrunner Marc Guggenheim. It started to air every 2 weeks, actually alternating with Flash episode or season 0, believe it or not, back in September 2014. And just like the name says, it captures what happened between seasons 2 and 3. It actually was released physically and digitally as a graphic novel in October 2015. So if you're more of a paper kind of fan, you can go and do that, or you can still pick up all the issues individually on Comixology. So the writers of this episode, or this issue, I'm going to say episode all night long. It's a podcast. As I mentioned, we're Marc Guggenheim, with also writing duties shared by Keto Shimizu, who is, as we've talked about on the podcast before, 23 episodes on Arrow as executive story editor, 11 episodes as writer. She wrote the Vixen series. She was also a writer on Being Human and The Cape. So great writing chops. And also Brian Ford Sullivan, who has written 6 episodes of Arrow 4 episodes of Arrow as the teleplay and was the co-writer with Marc and Keto on Vixen. So some great writing chops there. Now, unlike a normal graphic novel where it would just be a couple of writers perhaps and one artist or 2 artists, there were a lot of writing credits on this. So let's run down, give people their due. Joe Bennett, Craig Yeung, Jack Jadson, Neil Edwards, Benny Lobel, Angel Hernandez, Elena Casagrande, I love that name, Rod Rice, Simon Kudranski, Joe Bennett, and Craig Yeung, with colors by Jim Charla Lampidis and letters by Darren Bennett. So definitely a team effort from what you're able to take from writing duties on this one.
This is a doorstop graphic novel. This is thick. This is a lot of information, and I did have a lot of fun reading it. And kudos to everybody that contributed to it. Thank you very much. And I don't know why they decided not to show a lot of this stuff on screen. I guess they just didn't think they had the screen time in season 3, dealing with the whole who shot Sarah motif and everything. And quite frankly, they had to set it up. They took the time to set it up in 2.5. There was a lot of stuff that happened on screen. You're like, where did this come from? And you just shoved it off as this was the transition over the summer hiatus from season 2 to season 3. So of course they're going to change it a little bit, but I think that Marc Guggenheim knew that they were jumping ahead a little bit too far and he needed to bridge the gap. And I think it was the plan all along to bridge the gap with a graphic novel, thinking they could sell books. I mean, this show does not get 20 million viewers every week, so they need to make a little extra money on the side. And I think this is a great way to do it. So.
And Pop Funkos can only generate so much additional revenue, right? So they're looking for other opportunities.
You can only buy so many Felicities before they take over your room. That's
one
what's
in
behind
every room, actually. That's what you should really do.
I see.
But it's really interesting. This is actually the 3rd Arrow graphic novel to come out. The first 2 Arrow graphic novels weren't canon, believe it or not, and aren't referenced, even though they have a lot of the same writers and artists. So it's really interesting. The next time you're at your comic book store, take a look for the Arrow graphic novels. There's some really cool stories, especially this one great Diggle story when he and Ollie were boxing really early on, like season 1. So a great episode to take a look at. Hey, maybe it's really important to catch up on what happened right before the issues in this one, or the events took place. So if you take a look back at season 2, that was Slade Wilson's Siege of Starling City. And it was the wrap up of the Ravager arc and the wrap up of the Brother Blood arc as well. So when this graphic novel takes place, it's right after Slade has been vanquished. There's the big battle in Star City, or Starling City. Brother Blood has been killed off by Duchku. No, what was her name, SB? Jeez, I just keep calling her Ravager.
Ravager, Yvonne.
Yeah, the female Deathstroke.
This is bad. I'm going to look it up. Keep going.
Yeah, I'll keep going. So you're dealing with the aftermath of all of that. So what they did in this graphic novel is they broke it down into 3 separate chapters or different books. Book 1 of this graphic novel they titled Blood. So you can probably guess it. This deals with the fallout of Brother Blood, what happened to all his disciples that he had going on, what happened in the city. And remember, right at the end of season 2, then Detective Lance also had his heart attack. So what happened with Detective Lance, and why, when we start season 3, is he suddenly Captain Lance? So there were a lot of things they had to take care of this. Book 2 is Suicide Squad. And if you can remember, we saw a lot less of Suicide Squad in season 3 as well. So there were things that happened behind the scenes. And book 3 of this chapter, or this graphic novel, is called Green. And it really does character development for Ollie and the rest of the team.
Yeah, so it was a good breakup between the 3. There were definitely stories that were the main plot in each book. And there were still some things that were sprinkled throughout the whole thing, but like book 2 was highly foreshadowed in book 1. It was a whole subplot of what was going on with Diggle taking over for a pregnant Lila and going out into the field with the Suicide Squad. And the whole setup to that took place in the first book. And I think a little bit of that was to get Diggle out of the way, because there needed to be a lot of Arsenal and Oliver Queen sort of interaction. And with Diggle there, he would have hampered that. And of course, you needed the Felicity stuff too, because let's not forget, in between season 2 and season 3, all of a sudden Oliver starts to become smitten with Felicity.
I'm looking in the chat, and it's Isabel Rochev who was the Ravager. So SP, your powers of Google Foo have not failed you or this podcast.
Well, that's great, because you kept on talking, which allowed me to do that. So as podcasters, you got to be prepared to just talk and talk and talk and talk while your co-host goes and runs and does research on the spot, because I don't remember the name either. I didn't remember the name either. At this point, we have to, this probably should have been done before. We have to acknowledge the fact that we normally have a third co-host. Chris, unfortunately, cannot be here tonight, and it's really unfortunate, because he is a big fan of season 2, and he would remember the storyline and then get into this as well into season 3. So Chris, we hope you get better soon, and we will see you next week.
Here. SP, let's talk about overall impressions and then get maybe into some of the gaps that this filled out and talk specifics. So overall impressions of this book, did you like it? Did it leave you flat? How does it compare to the last graphic novel that we talked about on the podcast, Arrow Year One?
Yeah, so this was kind of a standard DC, almost glossy to the screen sort of graphic novel. As far as comics go, I do like the livelihood of the art. It speaks to me. It's more of a natural art. It's more of a real cartoon sort of thing. Although more detailed than you would find on like Archer or whatever. But I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it wasn't monotone colored throughout the book. There was different tones set from time to time, so that was good. But it was entertaining. Would I like keep it on the shelf for 20 years or so? No, but I have to read this in order to understand what happened in the show. I'd been referring to stuff like, what happened here? What happened there? Like, where'd they get the costumes? Wing and I in season 1 just made up the fact that he actually had a costume shop right there in the basement of the Foundry, which became the club. And no, that's not the case. The official canon says something different. And then where's the mansion? They need to go back to the mansion because there's all sorts of cool cars in the basement of the mansion. Well, that doesn't exist anymore either. So you need to read this in order to understand that you're never going to see those things again, or at least how we envisioned them here on the podcast. So because of that, it filled in the blanks. It was entertaining. It was really a light read. It wasn't anything deep into it, at least not for me. So it was just filling the squares.
Yeah, you nailed a couple of points that I want to bring up as well. And that's awesome. I love being on the same wavelength as my co-host. The art, so Jock's art in Arrow Year One is super stylized. You can tell that he is a leader in the comics field. And it's very different than, as we talked about, how many artists they had on this book working on the digital release, because getting a full-size book out every 2 weeks is a lot of work. So it is, I won't call it more generic, but more standard. You nailed it. It's more like the DC House style, where they said, everybody draw like this, which is pretty cool. And again, I noticed that there were no big splash pages or 2-page spreads. It was much more cell-based, panel-based. Yeah.
There was 1-page spreads, though, and they were at the beginning and ending of every book. And I'm failing to find them right now. But basically, you're looking at one of them on the cover. A shirtless Oliver Queen, there is a shirtless John Diggle, and there is a shirtless Roy. And they are the 1-page spreads.
Yeah. Something for everyone.
There you go.
But as it's huge, it's massive. And there's a 2-page kind of letter to the fans from Marc Guggenheim at the beginning. And he basically says, listen, you won't be able to keep track of how many Easter eggs and how many ties to the series there are. You should just...
I totally distracted Neil there. For the audio listener, what I did is I turned to one of the pages with Sarah and Nissa on it and Nana Parbat before Sarah left. Okay.
And whoever is drawing Sarah is really good at drawing Sarah, especially when she's in the canary uniform and battling Ollie. It's just like, wow. All right. You can draw Sarah. You can do that for me anytime. If I see you at a con, I'm asking for a commission. So yeah, it's a different book, but totally enjoyable. And if you're a fan of the series, this is huge, because this is the Green Arrow, the Diggle, the Felicity, the Huntress, the Roy that you know. And whereas if you're just a fan of the show and not of the comics could leave you flat because they're different people.
Right. Yeah, you're talking about the normal comics, not
exactly.
This fill-in for the show. Yeah. This is directly from the show. These characters are directly from the show. So this is not the Longbow Hunters. This is not Green Arrow Year One. This is dedicated to the show. And because of that, it's good that we're finally getting to this, like, what, a year and a half, 2 years later than we probably should have to begin with. But it was good. And so I first got this, and it is a bit thick, and some of it is because the pages are like magazine pages, so they're a heavier weight, whatever. But it is broken out into the 3 books, as you said, and each book does have its own kind of feel to it. I mean, overall, it's got the same feel, but if you want to get technical about it, book 1, book 2, and book 3 have a slightly different feel, and it's because the story that they're trying to tell in those books are a certain wavelength. Now, the first one, you know what? I've kind of gotten over the brother blood sort of thing, the Sebastian blood thing. And this kind of brought it out, and it was like, why are we doing this? But you have to go back to season 2 and the end and go, there were still these people around. There were still followers of Brother Blood. What happened to them? Some of them might have died in the siege, but I mean, they're still there. Remnants are still there. So this kind of ties up that story.
Yeah, and what the writers do, and they are the writers from the actual TV show, they go back and they include parts of season 2 so that you're caught up. They have Ravager or Isabel Rochef killing Brother Blood when she finds out that he's given the antidote back to Ollie and the team. They have the part where one of Brother Blood's followers is captured by Team Arrow, and that great scene where Felicity is going, oh, it looks like your parents' retirement nest egg is being donated to. Who are we going to donate it to? And look at this, an offshore account. Oh, you just made a donation to Greenpeace. So it is right out of the show, and those were great moments. So if you're worried about catching up, or man, I haven't watched season 2 in a long time, and you're thinking about checking out this comic, it's really easy to do so because they will give you all the bits that you know. But yeah, great things. And why don't we take a step back and look through some of the specifics? I think one of the big questions we all had going into season 3 is, why does Roy now have this red leather outfit where at the end of season 2, he was still wearing the red hoodie?
Right. So this actually is a multitude of answers, right? It's stacked upon stacked. So first of all, we were asking, where is his money? Where is that coming from? Well, apparently Moira Queen left a substantial, I guess, life insurance policy is what you call it, towards her children. And since Thea wasn't around, I guess Oliver got all of it. So Oliver has some cash, not the as Chris would say, not the billionaire money, but, millions. And yeah, he's going through it and he's spending it, and they're wondering where the money is going to. Well, part of it is, all of it really is going to really fund his nighttime activities. And part of that is they hook up with this guy is it Bloodhaven? I forget where it was.
Yeah, it's Bloodhaven.
It's Bloodhaven. His name's Lodai, and he does some amazing work. And he's not the most savory of characters, but they hook up with him. Diggle, I don't know who gives him the specs, but Diggle goes to get the costume, and he gives a suitcase full of cash to Lodai for this costume. So this is really good stuff that Lodai is making for him.
Yeah, and Lodai is also making the arrows, all the trick arrows for him. And I would like to think that at this point, Star Labs has transitioned over, so Ollie isn't dipping into his savings anymore for arrows. But one of the arrows that we see in this comic book is a prototype of the boxing glove arrow. In fact, with Felicity goes, I heard a pop. Was that the boxing glove arrow? And Ollie says, never call it that again.
That's true. We do hear that. Mainly, though, from the comic, it is a large piece of, I would say, metal, basically, that's being flung through the air. So it's a heavy, round cylinder that's on the tip of the shaft. It's coming in. Yeah. Great for kneecapping.
Yeah. But during book 1 or chapter 1 of this graphic novel, there's a pretty big mission with Roy and Ollie. And if you're ever wondering why Roy had to transition, like really had to transition out of the hoodie, it's because he gets shot. And Ollie said enough is enough. He needs ballistic nylon. He needs Kevlar. He needs a real suit. I can't keep putting my sidekick in harm's way in just a hoodie anymore. And that's what really caused this to happen. And that makes a lot of sense if you know how Ollie feels at fault for everything. He felt definitely at fault for this.
And Diggle, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but Diggle calls him out on it at the very end. He's like, look, you're a different person. You need to leave this stuff behind. So this is actually a continuing theme. It never goes away. They just did it in the show a few shows ago. Ollie still feels responsible for everything. Continuing theme. I don't think it's ever going to go away with the show. So there's that whole, where did the costume come from? And as we talked about before, there was the whole Brother Blood and what happened to his followers afterwards. Apparently there's, quite a healthy church. I would call it a cult. I would definitely call it a cult.
Yeah, the cult of Brother Blood was going strong. And again, if you remember back to season 2, he had a lot of followers in whatever subterranean caverns. And it turns out that the character who was, call it his lieutenant or his assistant through most of season 2 before he got kidnapped by Felicity and Ollie, finds the hood, that big leather mask, and kind of realizes the followers don't know who's under the mask. They just need a Brother Blood. So it's pretty awesome that he just takes it on. And the funny thing is, when he's unmasked by Team Arrow, they're like, oh, it's you. Oh, come on now. Like, we've dealt with you before. They almost don't take him seriously.
It was straight out of Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
It was.
Old Mr. Jenkins. Jinkies.
Scrooge not.
Exactly. But I think, Team Arrow does themselves a disservice by not taking this guy seriously, because he creates a whole lot of, let's call it crap, for the team.
He does.
Including, there's a whole Felicity kidnap arc, and they have to rely on other people to help them out. And we get to see one of my favorite Arrow characters, the Huntress, come back into this, being sprung from prison.
Yeah, that was great. So first of all, it's not a season of Arrow without Felicity getting kidnapped. It has to happen. And I think in season 1, it was actually Laurel that got kidnapped instead of Felicity. But no, she did get, I remember she got kidnapped because she had the Surface tablet with her and she did her magic with the Surface tablet. I remember that because I have that same Surface tablet and there's no way that is doing any stuff that she did with it. But anyway, so there's that. But then the Huntress comes in, and this is the Huntress that still has feelings for Oliver, but she sees that Oliver actually is starting to have feelings for Felicity, and Oliver is so dense, he doesn't understand it. And what is with all these women in the Green Arrow universe that will drop anything, everything at a drop of a hat to go help Oliver, whether it's his sister, his new girlfriend, his supposedly new girlfriend, or whatever. They just drop everything and go do it. And it's like, oh man, to be able to have that influence on women all over the world, I think we all can identify to that. But he's so dense, he just doesn't see it.
He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. And it wouldn't be a season of Arrow, at least an early season of Arrow, if Ollie didn't have a choice to make between two women who are being held at gunpoint by a villain. And again, it's all right. So I'm not going to call it lazy writing. I'm just going to call it calling back to prominent themes from the first 2 seasons, where one of the villains has both Huntress and Felicity basically at gunpoint, and he's like, you have to choose. I'm like, really? Are you Slade's protege now? Or
you have to choose kill a blonde. And if they were writing it a little bit better, they would have shown Felicity to tremble a little bit or whatever before you actually see what happens. And of course, Huntress is like, is he really that dumb? And he's the villain's like, well, yeah, that's what I've been saying. And she just turns around. I wasn't talking to you. And then just pummels him, takes him down. And it's like, duh, that's worse than monologuing. You let the capable one go, right? That's going to turn around and is going to kick your butt. And that's exactly what happened.
Let the one in the superhero costume go. She's the one she's
the one that you should let go, right? Duh.
My favorite Huntress scene in this, and we're jumping ahead from gaps to characters, but I got to go there, is she chooses to go back to prison at the end of that mini arc. And I think that speaks to her character. But she also calls Ollie out. And she's like, listen, how many people have you killed? And how many people have the rest of your team inadvertently or advertently or intentionally killed? Yeah, exactly. She says, I have killed 5 and they all deserved it. And I am the one that is volunteering to go back to prison. Ollie, you've killed how many henchgoons at this point in time? And he doesn't have anything to respond to that. He's like, okay, good point.
I thought it was great. She said, I killed 5 people, but I didn't kill the one person that I was trying to kill that would have put me in here. It was her dad,
Which they come back to. It's great because they come back to that in season 3.
They do. And I wish that we would get a little bit of her in season 4 or season 5. I meant to do this before this episode. I need to go back and figure out what that actor is doing right now, because I think she's just so busy with her current schedule. That's probably why they just can't fit her in. But she is a fan favorite and everybody's looking forward to seeing her again, as well as Cupid. And, all the ladies, Nyssa, Katana, we'll take them all.
We'll talk about what Nissa's got on her plate a bit later in the podcast in the news section too.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, we also got our first look at the new Count Vertigo. So again, in season 2, we had the great original Count Vertigo. He was one of my favorite characters. It was a real shame that we lost him. But we had that bald guy that came in as the new Count Vertigo in season 3. But again, he makes his first appearance here in the graphic novel, which is pretty cool. He doses Ollie because, again, it's not an early season of Arrow if Ollie doesn't get dosed with vertigo. And
got to do the drugs.
And it's a good flashback. It's how we keep getting Robert Queen in the show. So
right, and the magical herbs to come save him later.
Exactly.
They're not magic. So. Right.
And then SP, you talked about this a bit at the beginning. It's why we don't see the mansion anymore.
That's right. The mansion is toast. Literally, it goes up crispy, bonfire. Just the whole thing goes up because in book 3, one of the successful Brother Blood projects actually comes back to haunt Oliver Queen and just wants to take Oliver Queen out. And that's a storyline that is again duplicated from the actual show, where you have somebody that's been affected by Robert Queen and Queen Consolidated, and his whole family life is ruined, and he's going after Oliver Queen. Well, now he's got some Mirakuru in his system, some designer Mirakuru, and apparently he can actually think, and it makes it an interesting thing. But he kidnaps one of Oliver Queen's women again and puts her in the mansion and to lure him there, and then torches the place, thinking it's going to take care of Oliver Queen. It's going to take care of the mansion, which is a symbol of who he is and his family. And it's going to take care of him personally because he's going to get nice and fire toasty, just like Deadpool was in the Deadpool movie, right? Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
And yeah, it doesn't work, but the mansion is gone.
Yeah. And I love how he lures him there and lets him know where he's at. He leaves a carved handrail from that main staircase, one of the balusters, one of the fancy carved things on one of the posts for Oliver to find. And again, this is really cool when they figure out this guy doesn't have a beef with the Green Arrow. This guy has a beef with Oliver Queen. And Ollie's like, but I was gone for 5 years. Like, I know I peed a lot of people off before I left. But again, he has a problem with the entire Queen family and what the Queen family stood for and how they were, treating the people that worked for them in some cases, which was pretty interesting to see.
So a couple of things. First of all, because he's going after Oliver Queen, Oliver has to fight him in the streets and then is just assisted by Roy, but he doesn't have his costume. I mean, this is happening real time. So Oliver gets a hockey goalie mask on his face to hide his face. Yeah, that's great. And then second of all, he calls him out. I forget the character's name, but he calls him out on Oliver and like let's see. You were gone for 5 years. You come back. And then right when you come back, this hooded vigilante just starts showing up. I might be stupid, but I think I figured it out. You're the Green Arrow.
Yeah, a crazy Mirakuru soldier is the one that puts it all together. Or as we said, maybe everybody in Star City has figured this one out except for Detective Lance at the beginning. So,
right. So that's what happened. And the mansion goes poof, and there you go.
Exactly.
But one more. Go ahead. Well, I was going to say one more thing. In book 2 is the main arc. And I think book 2 spoke to me the most because it was talking about the kidnapping of girls in the Middle East. And we've seen that happen in Africa and in the Middle East lately. And I think that was taken out of real news. But the president basically gets Waller and says, take care of this. We can't do it officially, but off the books, you go take care of it. And it just, that whole storyline spoke to me. It's what everybody would want to see. And she breaks out, not her normal staff, but because she has to do it under the weather, under the radar, she breaks out the Suicide Squad. And she's going to send her most competent agent out there, Lila, but she's pregnant. So Diggle steps in and goes, I got this. They don't know what they're doing until they get the mission brief. And he's like, yeah, I got this.
Yeah. Girls kidnapped by terrorists and extremists in the Middle East, in the hypothetical, it's not Egypt, let's call it Kandak.
Yeah.
Part of the Middle East. But and we also get Teth Adam, which I think is the Arrowverse's version of Black Adam. I mean, it's too close a name to be total coincidence. Although he's not a Shazam villain, he's not got powers. He is bald, more like the Black Adam that you get in Injustice, not in the regular comics. And he's a badass as well. So
I don't think they wanted to call him Black Adam because I think they wanted to reserve that character in the future for screen time, whether it's on the small screen or the big screen. They just didn't want to, since this is canon, they didn't want to take him out here. And I don't know if that was a DC decision or Marc Guggenheim's decision, but whoever it was, I would agree with it. You don't want to use Black Adam in a graphic novel only.
No, and listen, it's we saw the beginnings of what we knew was going on with purging people from the Suicide Squad before we got into season 3, right in this episode. And I've spoken to this a whole bunch. If Keto Shimizu ever comes on the podcast, I would love to ask her, and she may not be able to answer, why they killed off Bronze Tiger in the comic book. And again, it's a spoiler alert, Bronze Tiger dies on this mission, and that's the Suicide Squad. It wouldn't be the Suicide Squad if there weren't consequences, if these weren't suicide missions they were sending them on. So yeah, and again, he was one of my, aside from Deadshot, he was one of my favorite characters on the Suicide Squad. He had that great history with Ollie, early on when Ollie was learning to not kill, where he was, the wraparound arrows that were being shot at him and those great claws. So it was sad, but it provided impact and it provided real consequence to the mission they were sent on.
The way he went out, though, was like, with his own claws being shoved into his side. It was like, oh, that hurt.
Yeah. And it's not an off-screen death, but because we saw it in the comic book, but for any fans of the show, it's an off-screen death. And that stings. It's like coming back to an episode and being told, oh yeah, that guy that you've watched for 2 seasons, oh yeah, we took him out between episodes. That's effectively what happened. So it is sad, but again, there's so much story that they had to get into this, into between seasons, that things like that had to happen. And that has started this purging of the Suicide Squad that we saw in season 3 when we had the rest of the team effectively disbanded.
Right. It was such a shame because Suicide Squad was a great addition to Arrow. And for now, with Lila running Argus, I don't know if that was just a one-off or what in the Flash, right? It wasn't even in Arrow, but Lila is now running Argus. And we'll see if that continues. But Amanda Waller, knowing what happens to her in season 4 and then seeing her here again was like, oh, Amanda.
I'm right with you too, because while sometimes Ollie wasn't drawn consistently between parts of this graphic novel, I think, again, just like Sarah, Amanda Waller was drawn very consistently and very true to life, like in the show. So I was like, oh, I had the exact same reaction, SP, when we saw Amanda Waller. I'm like, oh, gone too soon.
Yeah, the likeness was definitely there. And again, let's drink to the drone strike. Here.
Yes, drone strike.
I don't know why we do that.
One of the great things about book 2 of this graphic novel, The Crisis in Kahndaq, was the inclusion at the tail end of the mission of both Nyssa and Sarah.
Yes,
I did not expect that to come in, especially because it's kind of on a tangent where the strongest, or the strong is the wrong word, but one of the more prominent of these Muslim schoolgirls who had assisted the rest of the girls that were kidnapped basically gets taken aside by Sarah and by Nyssa and brought to the League of Assassins. And it's just satisfying at the end. You're like, oh yeah, all right, that's, the original Ra's al Ghul was a bit of a jerk, but he gives you a new name and he makes you one of their own. And she's, aside from the fact she's going to be an assassin, she's in a good place. And
she takes care of business on her own. It was so cool, actually, bad guys policing bad guys and just saying, yeah, hey, look, this is the code of the League of Assassins or whatever. His life is yours. Take it. And she does. It's like, yeah.
Yep. Very satisfying ending.
Right.
And throughout the entire mission, I've got to also think, again, Diggle is not a member of Argus at this point in the comic book either, yet here he is leading an away team. I hope he gets to charge them like government contractor rates for what he's doing.
Well, he's not exactly in the middle of like Washington, D.C. or New York or L.A. for per diem rates. I mean, he's out in the desert, right? So
overseas pay, danger pay, per diem for.
Well, if he's not getting paid for it, Lila is getting paid, and he's just taking it's like going to work for your wife. It happens all the time, doesn't it?
I'll see if my wife wants to go for work when I'm not feeling up to it sometime. Yeah, that might work. Hey, let's talk about the characterization of some of the lead characters and then roll on to the news. So do you think Ollie was portrayed consistent with the show?
Very consistent with the show.
Yeah.
Very aloof in some ways, very headstrong, very personally responsible for a lot of the stuff that was going on around him. I think he was portrayed the way he was supposed to be portrayed at that point in time in the show.
Yeah, and I think this really speaks to how they set this graphic novel or this direct-to-digital comic up, with Marc Guggenheim and writers of the actual show also writing the comic book. Then, they have it in their minds. So many of these tangent comic books or some of these loosely affiliated or licensed properties, they have a separate writer, and there might be some input from the showrunners, but this was the same people, so they were able to maintain that same tone throughout. And we talked about some of the decisions he made. Free the, you can kill the blonde, free the brunette, and again, taking responsibility for everything of everybody's actions and carrying the weight. It's the Ollie we know and know and love. So the characterization was perfect.
If you didn't know it already, you knew he could fly a helicopter. You knew he could fly a plane. You knew that he spent some time in Russia, and you knew he spent some time in Hong Kong. So I don't think that was knowledge at that point in time in season 2.
No, it's great. And even the characters call it out. They say, well, we need to fly the plane. And he's like, oh, I can fly the plane. Oh, we need to fly the chopper. I can fly the chopper. And everyone's like, where did he learn to fly a chopper? Was he on an island? And he says the same thing. He's like, well, I might not have been on the island the entire time. Because, season 2, all of our flashbacks had just been the island so far.
Right.
So that was very cool. I also love the fact that they were able to do things which might have been prohibitively expensive given the budget of the show, like the parachute arrow. I have to call this one out because while we have seen some great effects, let's be honest, the majority of the special effects budget for the DC television universe goes to The Flash and to Legends of Tomorrow, of course. But things like the parachute arrow, they can do, and like the electrocutioner type character, they can do in a comic book. So that was great to see. The other thing that really called out to me is, yeah, of course, this is Oliver Queen, that his shoulder gets dislocated. He's in a sling, yet he still goes to assault Brother Blood's, call it cult temple, with his arm in a sling. Like, really? That's the call? That's the call you're going to make one-armed?
I'm all good. I'm good. I can do this. I got this.
Your main weapon is a bow. You kind of need two arms fully functioning for. No, I'm good. Yeah, I can do this. It's my responsibility.
I never said I couldn't use a gun. I didn't know how to use a gun, but he doesn't take a gun with him.
Yeah. So, SP, you're also our big Felicity fan. How about Felicity? How is her characterization? You know, we saw her as the damsel in distress. We also saw her as the kick butt hacker. Did she live up to your Felicity-ness?
At the time, I would say yes, because she had fast quips. She wasn't shaken by anything. She knew where her place was in the universe, and she was very alone. And I'm glad she never got that cat, but she needs to work on that security system to her apartment. Absolutely. And to go into her apartment and not be aware that there's, I don't know, a dozen bad guys at the kitchen table. Okay, Felicity. You need to work on that a little bit. But as true to the character in that point in time, you got to remember in season 1, Felicity was a one-off character that we actually got back because she was so beloved that it became more and more and more of a character. The character did not ever exist in the comics at all. So they had to create. Diggle really didn't either. I mean, there's been some determination on whether or not Diggle did have history in the comics or not. But he really didn't. So Diggle and Felicity, the two main characters in the show that are major part of Team Arrow, were not part of the comics. And so with her growing into her character, into what it is today at that point in time, I think it was a good shot. Now, damsel in distress, yeah. I mean, I've always said the girl needs to learn some moves. She needs to learn a little self-defense, if anything else.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate when the writers fall back on that, but I don't think they fell back on it very long, and it actually worked with the story. The same with Laurel being the damsel in distress near the end of the book for a tiny bit. Again, it wasn't long. It was, it worked in the context of the story, especially with the Mirakuru-powered soldier. But I'm glad we've moved past that in the broader story arcs, especially in the TV show.
I like Mad Felicity.
Yeah.
She's got some character to her on that.
Yeah. And that last scene that we saw her in, she walks away for the right reasons. Underline bold walks, which was awesome.
That's a podcast. That's a conversation for another podcast.
Listen, we've talked about the characterization of the Huntress. We've talked about Sarah being brought into the story. I think, we didn't touch on Sarah a lot, but Sarah is used throughout books 1 and 2, and even a bit in 3. So Sarah goes throughout the story. And given that we lose Sarah at the beginning of TV season 3, this was kind of her last hurrah before she's taken out of the picture. We've talked about the Suicide Squad and Bronze Tiger losing it. Again, I like Floyd Lawton. Again, man, just seeing all these characters in this comic, it makes me miss them even more. We talked about, how Amanda Waller tugged at the heartstrings. But again, seeing Deadshot as a member of the Suicide Squad in this, I was like, oh, damn you, movie universe. Damn you.
Right. Okay, just to go back to Sarah really quick, the whole setup to what Malcolm is planning actually takes place in here. So you're not wondering what Malcolm is thinking, why he's doing what he's doing. He is trying to get Oliver Queen to defeat Ra's al Ghul by killing Sarah. Yeah. That is his whole plan, because he needs to take Ra's al Ghul off the life. What do they call it? That basically the kill order on Malcolm. Yeah. He's like, I got to survive. So in order for him to survive, he figures out if he kills Sarah, then Oliver will go after Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, and again, what we saw is assassins are coming while he's training Thea, which you never really got a feeling for. So he is dealing with this mark on his life, this kill order from the League of Assassins. So you get to see that in the comic. You also get to see when Ra's al Ghul gets word that Malcolm Merlyn is in Star City, and Sarah is the one sent from Nanda Parbat to go get him. And that first confrontation, that there's going to be a showdown, and they do it on the rooftops, which foreshadows what we see in the very first episode of season 3 when she's killed on that rooftop. Spoiler alert for something that happened 2 seasons ago.
Right. So one of the things that caught my eye from this whole thing, I mean, it is entertaining. Yeah, I like the whole thing. One of the things I really liked about this was the Huntress and the way they treated her. But another was Roy, when he's hanging on for dear life on the helicopter, and he does something that Oliver has sworn he won't do, and he kills the dude. He kicks him off, and he makes sure he dies in order to save himself. And
go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And Huntress calls him out on that. She says, all right, again, I'm going back to prison. You just watched Roy kill that guy intentionally, and you're okay with it. But hey, listen, I'm going back to prison. That's, because that's the kind of person I am. I'm taking ownership for this.
It's safer for me in prison than out in your nut house of Starling City right now. That's what she's really saying. Like, Iron Heights, as volatile as the place is, it's a better place for me right now.
So listen, we've talked a lot about this graphic novel. There are so many linkages to both season 2 and season 3 of the CW's Arrow show. The writing is spot on. Given how many artists there are, I think it's fair to say some of the characters are consistent throughout. Some of them change a bit. That's pretty evident if you're looking at Ollie's face throughout. Sometimes he's spot on. Sometimes he's not quite as spot on. But SP, would you recommend this to fans of the show?
Oh, for fans of the show, yeah. It doesn't matter if you like comics or not. You need to get this information firsthand if you're a diehard fan of the show. If you've seen every episode, if you own some of the seasons, whatever, you really do. And ladies, nice shirtless pinups of all the main guys. Heroes, anyway, on the show.
Yeah. And guys, if that's your thing, who are we to discriminate?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm petting my comic right now.
Honestly, that's gym motivation for me right there.
I know. Jeez, the guy's stacked. These were when the guys were the most defined. Absolutely. So yeah, it is a must read. It's a must have if you're a diehard fan of the show.
Yeah. So any final thoughts, or are we good to move on to the news?
I'm good to move on to the news. Let's do it.
Awesome. Yeah. And by the way, I echo your recommendation. If you're a fan of the show, check this out, pick it up either in digital for Comixology or in hard copy from your local comic store. Support your local retailers, or check it out on Amazon if you don't have anything near you. Hey, there was a bunch of news. It's been a few weeks since we talked news.
Yeah, I don't. I'm glad that you assembled this because I have not had a chance to keep up with it. Well, first, let's talk about the behind the scenes pictures that started to come out right after we recorded our last episode that we had news in. And there's some light on the funeral scene, isn't there?
Yeah. So it's really interesting, actually. Some set photos have leaked from the funeral scene, which was exciting. And we have the link in the show notes to Comic Book Resources, one of many places that broke this story. You basically get to see everyone. Now, a lot of speculation, and skip ahead if you don't want wild speculation for about the next 30 seconds or so, that there are shots of Lance with and without a wig. So people are thinking they're either trying to throw us off, or there's some flashback, or there's something going on with Lance. So those of you, if you've got an office pool on who's in the grave and you've got your money on Lance, you could be trending in the right direction. But again, because there's both with and without wig, it might not be Lance. They just might be screwing with you.
Right. So we know from previous articles that they've actually shot 2 grave scenes. The speculation is one of the grave scenes is a flashback scene, and one is in real time. But there's other speculation that said they did 2 real time to throw people off on what happened today. You know, who's in the grave in episode 19. So we're still in what's going on? And that way they were able to take these set photos of people in funeral garb that are actually walking around and not in the casket. Say, hey, look, they're not in the grave. Well, you never know.
Yep, you never know. And just like most showrunners lie. Showrunners throw you off. They're promoting the show, which is awesome. Hey, just a few days ago, the synopsis for episode 16, Broken Hearts, hit. And just like we'd thought, Cupid is coming back.
Yay! She's
What's
crazy.
More,
that crazy woman.
I love Cupid. And again, she was a character that was introduced by Marc Guggenheim in the comics during his pretty epic Green Arrow and Black Canary run. So I love it when a creator gets to see the evolution of their characters. But what's really interesting is this talks directly about that wedding picture that we saw. And I remember Marc Guggenheim came out a few weeks ago and said, it's not a dream sequence. It's not a flashback. This wedding is actually happening. So all the Elicity shippers went, oh my God, the wedding is actually back on.
Yay.
Oh, something must happen.
Not so much.
Not so much. And the setup and the synopsis for episode 16 of season 4, Broken Hearts, is Cupid's back and she's killing people in love. So Ollie and Felicity fake their wedding as a trap.
It's a trap.
This is what I wish we had Chris as a Star Wars fan.
I know. Well, I'm a Star Wars fan too, but I have always been saying when I get sick, I'm going to record that. I'm going to come on a podcast and I'm going to say, it's a trap. And it's going to sound like Admiral Akbar. It hasn't happened yet. I'm not trying to jinx myself. I'm knocking on wood right now, but
knock on wood. I got wood around.
Yeah, when it happens, it's going to be good.
Are we still doing phrasing?
It needs to be in the rotation.
Listen, we talked earlier in the podcast about the fact that we big fans of Nisa, but Nissa Agul may have another gig. So Katrina Law is currently tapped to be in the CBS pilot of Training Day. So if you remember the Denzel Washington show, it's set, the new pilot, the new TV show for CBS is set 15 years after the movie. And Katrina Law is going to play one of the main supporting characters. And it sounds like a great cast. They got Bill Paxton in there as well. So this could be cool coming this fall.
Let's take a look at the last TV show Bill Paxton was on. What was that? Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And yeah, he played Agent Garrett, which turned out to be a big bad Hydra agent. So yeah, the dude can play crazy. That's for sure. I'm really looking forward to seeing him on there. But more importantly, I'm looking forward to seeing Nissa because I change the channel every once in a while to go to the Hallmark channel just to see if she's there. Love me some Katrina Law. She is a phenomenal actor. Really like seeing her, enjoy seeing her on screen. Wonderful, good girl, I guess is the best way to describe a Hallmark channel movie. And wonderful, bad to the bone, bad person on Arrow as well. So she's got the range. She can go anywhere and it's just awesome.
That's so cool. More people are coming back, and I love it when characters cross shows in the DC CW television universe. So we are getting Bug-Eyed Bandit coming back to the CW universe. So if you remember, she was actually in the Flash episode that had Felicity in it. Now Bug-Eyed Bandit is coming back to the Arrowverse to take on Felicity. She's going to be breaking out of jail and turning up at Palmer Tech, threatening to kill everyone.
I'm trying to remember where I remember seeing Emily before as well. She was in more than The Flash, and she's an amazing actor. She knows what she's doing. She's a really hardworking individual as well. So I'm just waiting to see her on screen again. It's going to be fun.
I think she's in Walking Dead. Emily Kinney is the actor.
Right. But after she was killed in Walking Dead, that's when she came on Flash. And then she did something else. I can't remember what that was, like a movie or TV, like a miniseries or something like that. But she's done more things than The Walking Dead. Walking Dead is where she's been discovered, but she has had fun since.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. She was fun, and I think the interplay between Felicity and Bug-Eye Bandit is going to be awesome, like it was last time.
Chris in the chat, by the way, he's in the chat, and he said she's doing music too. So Emily Kinney is doing music, just in case you didn't know. She's kind of a good singer.
Awesome. Some more news. The CW has come out and set the date for all their television finales. So they have published a calendar online. We are getting the season finality. Finality. I don't know where that came from. The season finale of Arrow on May 25th. So grab your calendars, grab your Outlook, your iPhone, your Google calendars, mark it down. It will be an epic episode. And of course, May 26th will be the Starling Tribune talking season finale.
Looking forward to that. It's going to be fun. That's when we transition from the big season finales to graduation parties, weddings, and cookouts. So it's going to be a fun summer. Mm-hmm.
And some non-DC television news. A lot of people picked up on this story that SP in the States. Do you guys have like an election or something going on right now?
Yeah, for the past like 3 years, it's been going on. Yeah, we're talking about Hillary Clinton here, and she. For those of you that don't know, there's some real world stuff going on in Flint, Michigan right now. And apparently there's a cry for justice. They feel that their politicians have failed them. And there's been a big problem with water in Flint, Michigan, like dangerous water that has caused a lot of health issues. So this is real world. We don't want to make light of it. But Hillary Clinton came in, and what did she say, Neil?
She said, your politicians, they have failed this city.
They have.
So, yeah,
that was true. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people jumped and said that the showrunners for Arrow are probably helping out her script writers. I just think that's a pretty natural thing to say. I don't think it was intentional.
No, I do not.
No. More general DC news. We've talked about some of the really impactful graphic novels and story runs in Green Arrow's backstory. One of them we talked about was The Longbow Hunters, written by, the epic Mike Grell.
Mm-hmm.
And just today in one of the newspapers in Kentucky, they actually have an interview with Mike Grell talking about the impact of his Longbow Hunters series on the Arrow TV show. So if you're a fan of comics, or you want to hear some of where the initial storyline came back from, fewer trick arrows, more gritty, less comic booky, definitely check that out in the show notes.
Absolutely. And we are going to be going through Longbow Hunters at the very least this summer sometime. We're going to take some time this summer to go over Legends of Tomorrow. It's where we can fit it in. So we're going to be doing that. And then we'll take some time to go over the Longbow Hunters, because how can you not? Because of its immense impact. Immense. There I go too. Immense impact on the show itself.
Great. And just a couple of other really interesting articles out there. Moviepilot.com had an article that came out the other day, 5 facts you didn't know about Green Arrow. Some you might have known, some we've talked about on the show before. One is that a one-armed Oliver Queen is actually canon from the Dark Knight comics, that the creators of Green Arrow also created Aquaman. That's a fact I actually didn't know. That it's been retconned that Superboy got Oliver Queen into archery when they were both kids. I think if we've read year one, we know that's not necessarily the case. And that he might be a metahuman. And again, that I think that still is canon, at least pre-New 52. And that Neil McDonough voiced Ollie in one of the animated series. So a really interesting callback. Who would have thought that that Neil McDonough, now playing the big bad for this season, would have actually voiced Ollie. So
just love Neil McDonough. Stuff. I've always loved him on screen, no matter what he's played, good or bad. And he's just such a dynamic actor. It's just fun to see him on the screen. And I can't wait to go back and listen to him voice Oliver Queen. That's going to be cool.
Great.
I didn't even know, by the way, I didn't even know that Freddie Prinze Jr. was voicing a character on Star Wars Rebels until Lauren told me. I was like, really? I didn't know that. Wow. And then now whenever I see this character, I'm like, oh yeah, that is totally Freddie Prinze Jr. Anyway.
I'm going to jump ahead one story because there was a great interview that came out this week, last week. So Joseph David Jones, who plays Connor Hawke, if you saw the Legends of Tomorrow, Star City 2046, came out and he had a great interview on Den of Geek. So again, he talks about Connor Hawke researching the character of Diggle to figure out what traits that our 2046 version of Connor Hawke would have inherited from his dad growing up with him. He talks about working with Steven as the consummate professional. He talks about whether there's going to be a Connor Hawke spinoff. And he talks about diversity in the CW. And again, if you think about when this came out right after Vixen also came out. So you're seeing these great characters representing diversity in the DC television universe. And again, not to steal the lines of our prime minister here in Canada, but it's 2016, people. Come on now. We don't need reasons for diversity anymore. It should be in everything we do. So, but he speaks about it very highly and how much of an honor it is to be part of this movement.
I know, I'm so immune to it, unfortunately, because of my love of science fiction. And there has been diversity in science fiction, not as much as you would want early on. But I'm kind of like, this is kind of old news to me. And that's bad because it shouldn't be. And it should be celebrated, the fact that, especially with what went on in the Academy Awards this year. Like, really, people? You're just not getting it. I'm glad they made some changes on the awards. I really am. And we're going to see a different award show next year, hopefully. So we'll just see how that goes.
Great. Hey, should we move on to toy and comic news?
Yes, let's definitely do that. I like my toys.
Great. So a couple of quick points to make. This week, now it's funny, we've been talking about digital comics all episode because we've been going back through Arrow episode 2.5. But the current direct-to-digital Arrow linked-in graphic novel is the Dark Archer Malcolm Merlin series. This week, digital comics come out on Mondays, not Wednesdays. Dark Archer issue number 5 came out, and Arthur King, which is actually Malcolm's alter ego, his secrets continue to unravel after he and his partner survive a brutal sandstorm. So definitely check this one out, direct to digital. And while there are no Funko Pops released this week, HeroClix actually released their convention exclusives for the rest of the season. There's some great stuff coming out from across different genres, but coming out in their convention exclusives, they have Green Arrow HeroClix. So if you're a fan, you will be able to pick up the hood, a version of Green Arrow with the old hoodie from the seasons 1 and 2. You'll also be able to pick up Diggle and Green Arrow's motorcycle. So I'm not a HeroClix guy, but I have a lot of fans that are. Just another reason to go to a convention this summer.
Yes, and I keep getting emails from Hot Topic, by the way, and they're saying that there are mystery Pop Funkos that are now available in store only. That's what I was thinking. So have you been to Hot Topic recently?
We don't have them.
If Chris was here, I know he'd been to Hot Topic because he goes all the time. He got 2 malls that he can go to, one by his work and one by home. And he stops by both of them on the way home every day to check out Hot Topic for the Pop Funkos. So I'm kind of wondering if what's going on there. So I might have to stop by Hot Topic and whatever. And I did stop by the comic book store. I picked up my comics yesterday, and I'm trying to remember. I got some DC comics. I'm trying to remember what was available this week that I've got. I can't remember what it was.
Well, one comic that did come out this week, and if it's not something I've been reading, but I kind of have been trade waiting, so I am going to make it down there this weekend. If you're a fan of Black Canary, the all new DC universe or the new You series has been getting some great reviews, and they finally released the first arc in graphic novel. So it truly, I've been trade waiting on this. The trade is out. I can wait no longer.
Yeah. So Wonder Woman came out with their issue number 3 this week. And that's big because the Wonder Woman is being drawn like Gal Gadot, really. So they've redefined the role in the comics to look more like her. And that the Legend of Wonder Woman number 3 is what it was. And I believe that must have been what I picked up because I'm looking through the list right now. I can't see anything else. I haven't had time to read it yet, but I will this weekend.
Awesome. And that's it for Toy and Comic News for this week.
Absolutely. So if you like this show, and we've gone a little bit off topic than we normally do, because we normally talk about the show Green Arrow. So it's not off topic. It's just off media. And Chris isn't here, so we're 1/3 less funny. But we do have, if you're enjoying this, we do have a host of other great geeky shows. We're part of a network called GetAGeek.com. One of the other shows on the network is called Game Life Balance US, and they are a spinoff of the Game Life Balance Australia version of the podcast. And apparently they're starting up now too. So you've got two great Game Life Balance podcasts. It's about gaming and trying to balance your life with video gaming in general, that sort of thing. And you might have remembered Game Life Balance as the former unqualified gamers. They're still unqualified, but they're trying to balance their unqualifiedness with the rest of their life. So there you go. Anyway, this week, Game Life Balance US podcast episode 9, 2666, and the end of Twin Peaks. So Cody and his girlfriend Casey discuss the current production of Roberto Bolaño's 2666 at Goodman Theater, which they had an opportunity to see over the weekend. They also finished watching Twin Peaks and have a lot to say about its final episode. So not the end of the reimagined Twin Peaks, but the end of the original version of Twin Peaks. So if you want to hear that, just go and find it. It is at GonnaGeek.com.
Nice promo. Listen, I just want to take this chance to thank our listeners and our viewers over here on Blab. I want to thank everybody who downloads our podcast, everybody who's listening on Spreaker, watching the replays on YouTube, and thanks to the people that do the editing behind the scenes on the show as well. I especially want to thank all the live listeners and participants in our Blab chat. Sometimes you'll hear us call out comments in the sidebar. Even if we aren't calling them out, we are always reading them and probably trying not to laugh, guys. So thank you very much. If you want to join in the live fun, check us out Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on blab.im and search for the Starling Tribune or just look around for us on geeks.live. And don't forget, after the show, we always open up the fourth seat on the Blab interface for our live listeners to hang out and share their thoughts on the episode and anything that we've said during the show. You can watch the next live show on the Gonna Geek Network over on geeks.live. The next live show on the network is going to be All Things Good and Nerdy, Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time.
That's right. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. We would love a 5-star review on iTunes. We really would. And I guess that's begging for it. So yeah, make it funny too, and we'll read it on the podcast. And we might actually give you some swag. We have some swag to give away, and we'll probably need to do a contest. But if it's funny enough, we'll give the swag anyway. And definitely like us on Facebook. A YouTube channel is Gonna Geek. So go to youtube.com/GonnaGeek. And always badger us on Twitter. That's at Starling Tribune, or any of our individual handles as well.
Great. And if you want to share your thoughts, head on over to our Facebook page or send in a tweet, or you can call us. That's right. We have a listener dial in line. You can reach us at 1-612-888-CAVE. That's 612-888-2283. SP, it's been fun hanging out and talking comics, sir. I think that wraps it up for another week. Any last words before we sign off and open this up to our live listeners on the blab.im interface?
Hashtag
Stargate Pioneer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hashtag Oliver Queen's Women.
Hashtag read more comics. Oracle, I think we're done here.
This was the Starling Tribune. You can leave us feedback at GonnaGeek.com or check out our archive at StarlingTribune.com. Visit GonnaGeek.com for more podcasts. Music by Kevin MacLeod can be found at Incompetech.com. This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, stories, and situations are the property of Time Warner. No infringement is intended. We will see you for the next episode of CW's Arrow.
Ray in the chat makes a great point. I was going to bring this up anyway, but he said, I'm going to try to make it to C2E2. Still not sure, though. We did not have a chance to read the promo during the podcast because there's only two of us and we kind of just glanced over it. But just as a reminder, Chris and I will be at C2E2. That is the Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo, Friday, the 18th of March. We're going to be doing a panel with the two of us, with four other hosts of Gonna Geek podcasts. 2:45 p.m. in room S503. The panel is going to be called Everyday Podcasting for Your Everyday Life. We're looking to give you something to help you with your podcasting. And most importantly, we want to meet you. So just come listen to the great podcasting stuff and then ask us questions. Be prepared to, if you like podcasting or want to know what goes on with podcasting behind the scenes or whatever, you be prepared to ask questions because that's what we're going to be there for. It's going to be myself, Chris, Cody from Game Life Balance US. It's going to be Naki from All Things Good and Nerdy. It's going to be the legendary Mr. B from Legends Podcast and formerly of Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast as well. And also Willie Nelson. Yes, that Willie Nelson. No. Not that Willie Nelson. We're talking about our Willie Nelson, Willie D. Nelson. He is on ATGN. So come out and join us. That'll be great.
Totally. So, hey, fans, if you're in the live interface, that seat is open. So come on by, join us, say hi.
So Cajun Chan in the chat, he can't participate. He doesn't have a mic yet. He said, will the panel be recorded? Yes, the panel will be recorded. We're hoping. We've got a couple of, backups. We're hoping that at least one works. So we don't actually know what the configuration of the room is going to be. So we're trying to plan for all contingencies. We don't know if it's going to be the great audio that you're getting right now, or if it's going to be more recorded audio that you would get if you just placed this recorder right here. I'm going to take this very recorder. It's a Zoom H5, and I'm going to take this recorder, and with these microphones, these XY microphones, I'll be able to record the room, or if I can plug into the audio panel, I'll be able to do that. So it's a long answer to your question, Cajun. I know you probably you weren't wondering all that, but I'm just stating for the record, we're going to try, and we just don't know how well it's going to be. Oh my gosh. He's back from the dead, Mr. Chris Farrell.
The simple answer is yes, it will be recorded, and yes, my voice is that bad right now.
It's a trap.
Not on.
Hey, go ahead, say it.
There's a trap.
There you go.
That's what we wanted.
That's right. Well, you get better, sir, and hopefully you'll be better in time for at least the panel next week, if not for All Things Good and Nerdy or Getting Geek.
Well, hopefully I will be for tomorrow's stuff. My voice is better now, but it doesn't last for long. So
okay.
Hopefully with another night's sleep and stuff. But yeah, it's hard to be a podcaster when your voice doesn't work.
I know, it sucks. It happened to me a couple of times. And for those, we didn't pimp it, but for those that don't know, we are doing a live Better Podcasting tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And that will be at geeks.live. I totally spaced out about that. Chris will be joining Stephen and I for a live version of Better Podcasting. So that is the next thing that's going to be on geeks.live. Jenny's here. Jenny, if you want to step in, that's fine. What we talked about this today, and Chris didn't talk about it. He just jumped in right now.
Chris can barely talk.
Yes. What we talked about was the Arrow 2.5 graphic novel, basically detailing what happened in between seasons 2 and 3, because there's some great nuggets in here.
Great. And yeah, Cajun Sean in the chat has been saying Spider-Man in the Captain America Civil War trailer. Woohoo. I think the geek world exploded today.
Okay. So let's talk about that for a second, because I've been saying this since I saw the first trailer. I'm going to ask you guys a question. Do you think Rhodey is dead? Chris is shaking his head no. Yeah.
Nope. My money's on no.
Yeah, I think it's a MacGuffin to mask the real character that they're going to kill off.
You don't give it away in the trailer.
Nope.
But they are, I do believe that they are going to kill a major character. Now, it's comic books, so are they really going to stay dead? Probably not, but
major characters always come back.
That's right.
Yeah.
Even Sitwell. We're going to get Sitwell back. He's just going to pop up.
Sitwell back.
Jenny, yes, that's who I'm referring to in the chat. She says Captain America. I do believe that they are going to pull that thread from Civil War. They're actually going to kill him. I think that's why that they're having Emily Van Camp come back. I think they're going to be true to the comics there.
Well, that sucks.
I know. Great trailer. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. That's amazing. I don't know what's coming out of the sea, but I think that Avengers hut is just amazing. I just love the whole thing and how it went down. And you're finally seeing the tension on the screen as they're actually talking and not fighting between Captain America and Iron Man.
And the callback to the first Captain America where he tells him to stay down. And he can do this all day.
I could do this all day. That was actually in his other movie as well. So that wasn't a one shot. But yes, it was a callback to the first Avenger.
Yeah.
And Chris went bye-bye. Bye, Chris.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry,
Chris, you should be saving your voice for other things, not for us, man. So, hey, if there's no other callers, SP, should we wrap this up for the evening?
Yes.
Anybody else want to join in?
I think we're at that point. So it was a great podcast. Thank you very much, sir. And
it was a lot of fun. Yeah. Always fun to hang out.
We can definitely do this again next week. Yes. So next week we will be did we talk about this?
No, we didn't.
We will be talking about Man of Steel. So brush up on your Man of Steel this weekend in preparation for Batman versus Superman. Boy, I can really talk and remember stuff right now. And Neil has convinced us to go ahead and do this. Chris and I, even though I don't hate the movie, Chris and I are both like, I guess.
Oh, Gage and Sean's going to skip next week.
That's fine, man. You can't. Yeah. It's going to be a shorter cast because both Chris and I have to get up at the crack of dawn to make it to Chicago for the panel. So we're going to cut it off at 9:30.
Yeah. 9:30. God, I got to talk for another 2 more hours. Sorry.
9:30 Eastern, because Chris and I are both on the Eastern time zone.
All right. Well, hey, SP, everybody in the chat, it was fun to talk.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait.
I can't leave.
We can't leave. We've got the network owner coming in. Jeez.
Hi.
Hi, Steven.
Hi.
Steven. Hi, Mr. President.
I was just curious if you knew of any other live shows happening this week.
I talked about it like 3 minutes ago.
I know you did, but I actually was popping on to say, I did not read 2.5, but I am totally going to go read it. I was doing stuff in this room with you guys playing in the background, and I am absolutely going to seek it out and read it because it sounds like it was something that I definitely should have and I missed.
Yeah. Did you miss me pointing out these pages before?
Yes, I was not in the room. I had to go upstairs, but I'm going to do it tonight then.
Yeah. Tonight would be a good night. And it just magically happens to automatically open to those pages. I don't know how that happens.
No, but seriously, like, I can't believe I haven't read this. And you know my history. I'm shocked that I hadn't.
Yeah, the man who's run a comic book website and podcast, but really this was a compendium to it was in season 3 or season 2. I can't remember what the dates. Neil, help me out. It was
actually coming out during season 3 because they figured they had to backfill because they had a plan the entire time. They just wanted to let you know how they got there. It's kind of like reading the writer's notes to figure out kind of what they've just left off the page and turn it into a comic. And it was fantastic.
Which is cool because, you know, you hear that there's always a ton of the storylines and different ideas thrown out that they never make it to the screen, right? And there's some really solid ideas. So I'm excited. I got to do it.
Yeah, you do. It does take a while to get through. It is a doorstop of a graphic novel, but it's really, it's good. It's entertaining. You won't be able to put it down.
Awesome. Well, I'll skip out and let the legendary Chris Farrell hop in here. So have at her, Chris.
See you later, Steven. We can't hear you, Chris. Sorry, man.
Thanks, guys. Good show.
Okay, thanks.
See you, man.
All right, they're both gone. That's it. Jenny, right. Unless you want in, we're going to take off.
All right.
He said see ya. Okay.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.